Good evening and welcome to tonight's bedtime story. Today we'll explore the story of how Galileo Galilei challenged the church scientific struggle unveiled. Find a comfortable position and let yourself relax. Let this story carry you through a peaceful night. Ready? Let's begin. Galileo Galilei's journey was one where the allure of celestial wonders clashed starkly with the earthly tether of expectations. Under the vast Tuscan sky, the young Galileo stood where tradition and innovation intersected, influenced by the aroma of tilled soil and the sound of his father's lute, a melody steeped in familial hopes. His father, Vincenzo, envisaged a future rooted in the esteemed realm of medicine, yet Galileo felt an undeniable pull towards the mysteries of the cosmos. By the side of their family vineyard, each star above twinkled with untold truths, urging the young thinker to look beyond the terrestrial bounds. While his heart yearned for celestial explorations, the weight of filial duties lingered heavily on his shoulders, an anchor in contrast with his soaring ambitions. It was a quiet struggle, one unseen by those around him but deeply felt within. As the night deepened, the swirling constellations whispered promises of knowledge and adventure, igniting a desire in Galileo to question the confines of accepted wisdom. The celestial bodies, dark, expansive, and rich with untapped potential, enticed him more than the prospect of practicing medicine. Each star sang a quiet hymn of discovery, eroding the certainty of his father's wishes. Yet, in the shelter of his family's expectations lay the budding spark of his astronomical pursuits, a journey that would eventually lead him to challenge not only scientific boundaries, but also the doctrines of an age-old institution. The universe awaited his inquiries, and with an unfaltering resolve, Galileo would set forth to turn the world's gaze skyward. In the hushed seclusion of his study, the aged wood of the floors carrying the faint scent of lemon wax mingling with parchment, Galileo Galilei felt a curious clarity unfurling within his mind. The night enveloped him in its velvet embrace. Outside his window the Tuscan sky glittered, a tapestry of stars sewn into the dark. Each pinprick of light, to those less inclined, might seem cold and indifferent, scattered haphazardly across the vast, ebony canvas. Yet, to Galileo, they were vibrant, lively entities whispering cosmic secrets in a language only he was audacious enough to attempt to decipher. These stars, dusted in silver, were not mere distant lamps hung by divine hand. They were worlds unto themselves, each holding the potential for revelation, each point an echo of ancient truths. Their light shimmered beyond the confines of his window, casting ghostly patterns that intertwined with shadow across the walls of his chamber, making them dance to a rhythm only he could see. The constellations, those eternal wayfinders, appeared as old friends with stories woven deep into their shimmering lines, tales that extended beyond the earthly domain and resonated deeply with Galileo's swelling sense of destiny. Tonight was no different, as Galileo sat surrounded by strewn papers and ink pots, the faint scratching of quill on parchment the only disturbance to the serene quietude. His thoughts carried him far from earthly concerns, up into the endless dome of heavens that had fascinated him since childhood. The stars spoke to him of possibilities of universes not yet charted in the great maps of human understanding. It was on such a night, while pondering these cosmic mysteries, that the flickering glow of a chandelier caught his eye. Suspended from a high and ornate ceiling, it swayed with a tantalizing regularity, a gentle to-and-fro motion initiated by a careless gust of nighttime breeze. Each swing seemed to etch an invisible arc in the air, a silent rhythm that captivated Galileo's ever-hungry mind. The consistent period of the swaying sparked within him a profound revelation. He saw, in the simple oscillation of this grand fixture, the germ of a monumental idea, a window into understanding the properties of pendulums. This seemingly mundane observation unfolded in his mind with the intensity of celestial fire. He saw in the regular back and forth an inkling of the clockwork nature of the universe. It was as if time itself whispered to him in the language of mathematics, the grand calculus that underpinned the mechanics of all things earthly and astronomical. Galileo marveled at the elegance of it, a universal dance of precision governed by principles yet to be fully understood or documented. Galileo's spirit, caught between the earnest pull of gravity and the delicate inspiration of revelation, soared. With his mind's eye, He envisioned mathematics as a golden key, unlocking doors to understanding that had for so long remained sealed. It was as if he stood upon a precipice, looking into a chasm filled not with darkness, but with the dazzling brilliance of infinite possibilities. He was not merely gazing at a swaying chandelier. He was glimpsing the profound harmony of the cosmos. Thus, on this fateful night, Galileo began to chart a course that would not only lead him to question the universe anew, but to seek out answers with a relentless, fiery curiosity that would leave the world forever changed. In the dim candlelight of his modest study, Galileo thumbed through his father's medical texts, their pages whispering promises of stability and prestige. Yet, as certainty and respectability called to him from those neatly inked pages, Galileo's heart remained restless. The faint aroma of parchment blended with the rich scent of beeswax candles, the air thick with the promise of a future he could not envision as his own. The heavy tomes instructed in the art of healing bodies, yet they left untouched the deeper musings of the universe that sang to him from the heavens above. By day, he dutifully attended lectures on anatomy and the human body, every phrase carefully curated by scholars who had long since passed. The dissection rooms were filled with the metallic tang of antiseptics and the hushed reverence of young men sworn to the oath of doctors. Despite his family's aspirations for him, every anatomical diagram felt like a diversion from the path his heart yearned to follow. The days were dutiful, yet devoid of a spark that could light within him a fire of purpose. His mind, as if betraying familial duty, drifted to numerical mysteries and the wider world beyond mere flesh and bone. A symphony of abstractions played out in his mind, beckoning with a siren call he was finding increasingly difficult to ignore. When darkness fell over Tuscany, Galileo found himself drawn outdoors, where the night air carried a crisp chill, releasing him from the confines of dusty study halls. Each star-studded night unfolded like the chapters of a divine tome he was destined to read. There, beneath the vast, velvety expanse of the sky, the infinite whisper of creation enveloped him fully. The constellations, with their steadfast positions in the cosmos, ignited his imagination, dancing with potential and the thrill of discovery. With each night spent under those celestial tapestries, the notion of a conventional life in medicine grew faint. The rustling olive branches in the gentle breeze seemed to murmur words of encouragement, urging him not to fear the unknown paths his heart willed him to take. He felt something akin to reverence, a calling so profound it could not be silenced. It was as if the entire universe conspired to steer him away from the responsibilities laid before him by those he loved. Alone with his thoughts, Galileo grappled with an internal tempest, swirling with fear, passion, and an undeniable pull toward something greater than he yet understood. His mind oscillated between his father's stern visage, a man hardened by life's practical demands, and the ethereal call of the stars, offering endless mysteries waiting to be unraveled by the calculations of a true mathematician. The tension between expectation and inclination grew taut. It was a crucible where the molten intensity of his aspirations began to take form. Perhaps it was the gentle timbre of the cricket's night song or the intoxicating scent of night-blooming jasmine, but Galileo felt the weight of his indecision give way to clarity. The world was an intricate puzzle, and he longed to decipher it not with a scalpel, but with the tools of a mathematician. There, under the Tuscan night sky, Galileo resolved his inner conflict. With newfound determination, he vowed to embrace the pursuits that moved him, the elegant dance of celestial spheres, the mathematical symphony of the universe. No longer bound by the expectations of others, he set his sights on the heavens, ready to chart a course uniquely his own. In the dim, haunting embrace of the Tuscan night, Galileo Galilei leaned over his rudimentary telescope, a contraption that seemed more akin to a toy than anything else purported to reveal the mysteries of the heavens. The air was still, with a hint of dew settling over the rolling hills that surrounded his humble abode. The scent of olive groves and fertile earth wove through the crisp breeze, while crickets chirped a rhythmic symphony in the underbrush. This was a world that seemed suspended between the tangible and the divine, where the weight of ancient stars pressed upon the very limits of human understanding. These nightly vigils by starlight were more than mere curiosity for Galileo. They were a sacred ritual. Here, under the sprawling canopy of celestial bodies, he He felt a profound connection, a silent pact with the universe that whispered secrets only he could perceive. As the cold seeped into his bones, the grandeur of the starry sky stretched above him, a vast tapestry of twinkling lights that marked the beginning of change, not just in the sky, but within himself. The conversations between Galileo and the stars were deeply personal. Each glimmer and twinkle carried a reminder of the life he should have led, tethered to the expectations of his family and society. His father, Vincenzo, had envisaged a secure future in medicine or law, professions that held prestige and promise. Yet, the celestial dance above beckoned in a way no worldly obligation could match. Beneath the spell of the stars, Galileo's resolve hardened. Science was not merely an academic endeavor, but a calling his destiny intertwined with the cosmos in a way that defied familial obligation. With the transition of night into dawn, the first soft pinks and golds of morning bled into the horizon. The stars began to fade, their secrets tucked away until the next night. These moments of dawn were sacred, signaling the shift from contemplation to action. As the light stretched across the Tuscan landscape, bringing warmth and color back to the darkened earth, Galileo felt an invigorating sense of purpose. The gentle embrace of the night had fortified him, prepared him to face the skepticism of a world not yet ready to challenge the ancient teachings of Aristotle and Ptolemy that confined humanity to a geocentric universe. The psychological tug-of-war within him was one of duty versus discovery. In the quiet hours that separated night from day, Galileo wrestled with doubts that lay hidden in the recesses of his mind. Could he withstand the scrutiny, the derision of those who would decry his findings as heresy? Could he reconcile the ambitions of the scholar with the responsibilities of the sun? In that golden glow of dawn, a warmth suffused his spirit, suffusing him with a steely determination. The universe was a puzzle, its pieces scattered among the stars, and he vowed to parse them, one revelation at a time. As Galileo packed away his instruments, the weight of the celestial revelations he had glimpsed still lingered in his thoughts of future, illuminated by the radiant light of intelligence and reason. Free from the shadows cast by doubt and tradition, his journey was just beginning, set upon a path of relentless inquiry and courageous defiance, drawn onward by the silent call of the stars, hovering just beyond the reach of dawn. Underneath a sprawling Tuscan sky, Galileo stood at the precipice of a decision that would alter the course of his life and perhaps the world. The scent of autumn leaves lingered in the air, mingling with the distant aroma of firewood burning in his family's hearth. Dusky orange and lavender hues painted the horizon as the sun dipped below the hills, echoing the duality of his thoughts, the warmth of familial expectations versus the cool, uncharted silence of his dreams. Galileo's father, Vincenzo Galilei, was a man of practical wisdom, his vision for young Galileo steeped in the assurances of a scholarly life in medicine. Vincenzo, a talented musician, had once strayed from societal norms himself and knew both the exhilaration and the peril it could hold. He had painstakingly mapped out a future for his son driven by stability and prestige. Yet, as Galileo wandered the halls of his father's well-appointed home, he heard the call of the stars, a siren song that filled him with an aching yearning for understanding beyond the earthly bindings of anatomical charts and medicinal herbs. In his room, Galileo often gazed upwards, losing himself in the silent ballet of the heavens. The night sky, speckled with stars, was to him a vast, untouched parchment upon which truth could be inscribed. The fascination began with the simplest whisper, a soft, compelling question that blossomed into a consuming fire. Could the universe be something more ordered and profound than randomness and chaos? The question wrapped around his heart, a constant companion even as his father handed him leather-bound tomes filled with medical knowledge. Conversations with his father often end outside under the indigo canopy of evening, where stars blinked knowingly. They had grown tense with the passage of time, these talks, gentle nudges melding into fervent prodding. Vincenzo's voice, though carried by a wind of love, bore the sharp edges of expectation. "The path of medicine is noble, Galileo," he would counsel, his eyes reflecting both hope and a shard of resignation. Still, within Galileo simmered a quiet rebellion, an unyielding urge to dive deep into the celestial ocean. He reveled in the intricate dance of equations, the purity of numbers that seemed to hum with an energy all their own. Inside the musty confines of Pisa University, beneath its high ceilings echoing with the tales of scholars past, he found solace in mathematics, a veritable key to the mysteries he longed to unlock. For each theorem solved, he felt doors opening, leading him beyond the confines of the known world. Yet, as he embarked on this solitary journey, Galileo was acutely aware of the weight of potential betrayal, not just of his father's dreams, but of the very safety and certainty that came with them. The unworn path he chose held only possibilities, with no guarantees of success. Shadows of doubt loomed large, whispering of failure, of a life adrift for a pursuit as nebulous and distant as the stars themselves. Despite this, his heart beat with a quiet, steadfast resolve, echoing the pulse of the cosmos he yearned to understand. Here, beneath the vault of heaven, he stood alone, yet in harmony with a purpose grander than any terrestrial glory. In that moment, Galileo envisioned a future not charted by others, but inscribed by the stars themselves, resonant with a deep, unwavering truth that transcended earthly expectation. The air was thick with the scent of ink and candle wax as Galileo Galilei sat hunched over his polished wooden desk, the flickering flame casting jittery shadows across the assortment of notes and mathematical instruments sprawled before him. Night had fallen over the city of Pisa, enveloping it in a velvet hush that seemed almost sacred to the scholar. Though most of the city slept, Galileo's mind was alive, pulsing with the luminous patterns of the cosmos that danced behind his eyes, even as he blinked against the strain of weary hours. Outside his modest chamber, the world of familial expectations loomed like a specter, whispering of paths untaken. He could almost feel the weight of his father's dreams pressing against his consciousness, dreams of a stable profession, a respectable life entrenched in tradition. But the pull of the universe, of truths waiting to be uncovered, was a force too potent to be denied. Each equation he calculated, and each celestial observation he recorded, were tiny rebellions against the constraints imposed by heritage. As Galileo lifted his gaze to the worn wooden beams of the ceiling, he heard the distant murmur of waves from the nearby Arno River, a soft and constant lullaby that accompanied his nocturnal vigils. The rhythmic flow mirrored the harmonious order he sought in the stars, a cosmic symphony of which he had only begun to grasp the opening notes. The quill in his hand hovered above the parchment, poised and trembling with the anticipation of discovery, while his mind traversed the celestial landscapes unfathomable to conventional wisdom. His nights were no longer dark voids, but rather bright with the brilliance of thousands of astral bodies, each a beacon calling him deeper into the mystery of existence. With each sweep of the telescope, handcrafted from tubes and lenses, he felt himself draw nearer to the divine fabric that wove time and space together. He often marveled at the capability of this instrument, a simple contraption that seemed to arc across the gulf separating man and the heavens. There was a solitude in his pursuit that Galileo embraced, a solitude that whispered of freedom, unshackled from the expectations of family roles and societal norms. It was in these quiet hours when the world seemed to recede that he felt closest to the core of himself, a soul on a quest not just for knowledge, but for a connection with the very essence of reality. Yet, amid these reflections, a slight edge of anxiety persisted, a constant hum beneath his intellectual reveries. Galileo knew well the peril of free thought in an age dominated by the strict doctrines of the Church. The fear was not oppressive, but it lingered like the old stone walls around the city, immutable and enduring. He resolved to tread carefully, to arm himself with the rigorous truths of mathematics and evidence, wielding them as both shield and sword in defense of his burgeoning theories. And so, under the vast canopy of the Italian night, amid the convergence of dreams and reality, Galileo continued his solitary voyage. His heart pulsed with the fire of discovery, burning away the skepticism and doubt that clung like shadows in the recesses of his mind. These were not just nights spent in study, they were the crucible of revolution, where ideas were forged into visions that would forever alter humanity's place in the universe. The night air was cool, its gentle brush against Galileo's skin serving as the only comfort during his solitary walks through the cloistered streets of Pisa. The familiar cobblestones beneath his feet echoed his solitude, a rhythm of thought rather than footsteps, etching itself into the tapestry of evening. Overhead, the velvet sky stretched infinitely, a tapestry woven with stars, each a distant beacon of inquiry. Under those Tuscan skies, Galileo often found himself staring upwards, the constellations kindling fires of insatiable curiosity within him. The scent of cypress mingled with the earthy aroma of damp grass, a grounding presence amidst his celestial imaginings. Each inhalation seemed to cleanse his mind, prepare him for the obstacles routinely laid by a society not yet ready to embrace the frightening, yet intoxicating new truth he saw more clearly with each passing day. Yet, even in the embrace of nature and the universe itself, a shadow lingered, the gnawing self-doubt that whispered cautiously in his ear, a hesitant specter from which he was never entirely free. During these moments, his thoughts drifted back to a life unexamined, the ease of following his father's insistence upon a career in medicine, perhaps even the reassurance of aligning his path with those paved by societal norms. Yet every calculation pulled him closer to the gleaming edge of discovery, curtained only by the courage it required to break from established thought. Galileo's heart beat not with the rhythm of tradition, but with the persistent thrum of the pendulums, a revelation so simple in its elegance yet profound in its implications. As he returned to his candlelit study, the warmth from the room greeted him alongside a cacophony of parchment rustling in the night breeze. Here, amidst the flickering shadows cast by the lone candle, the canvas of his thoughts came alive. The steady scratching of quill upon paper was the symphony of his soul, an artist painting with numbers and ideas instead of pigments. Each theorem, each hypothesis was another brushstroke, depicting a universe waiting to be discovered anew. In this intimate setting, Galileo's mind danced across orbiting moons and distant planets, a bold choreography that defied the static geocentric worldviews of his time. His scholarly work gave life to dialogues between mathematics and physics, between the finite realm of the known and the infinite tapestry of possibility. He was both mapmaker and navigator, charting courses into uncharted territories of scientific thought with each fresh line of ink. The tang of ink and the roughness of paper became as familiar to him as the Tuscan landscape, each interaction with these physical objects grounding his celestial quests in reality. But there was also an undeniable tenderness in these moments, a recognition of being part of something much larger, an orchestra conducted by the hand of nature itself. When doubt crept back into his consciousness, Galileo found solace in the quiet certainties of science. Each mathematical insight strengthened his resolve, a testament to the universal truths he pursued. For every setback or criticism, every murmured disbelief from peers, his calculations and discoveries whispered back, an affirmation of his path. It was a journey of profound dedication, a pilgrimage beyond the siren call of familial expectations, into the boundless expanse of intellectual freedom. Thus, under the watchful gaze of stars, and with the weight of potential futures upon his shoulders, Galileo continued onward. His path was lit by more than just moonlight. It was illuminated by the burgeoning understanding that he, Galileo Galilei, was a bridge between the world as it was and the cosmos as it would be understood by those in generations to follow. The mantle of discovery, both a burden and a gift, was his to wield. The night sky stretched out like an endless velvet tapestry, pricked with countless pinpoints of light, each one a tantalizing mystery for the intellect. Galileo Galilei stood at the edge of his small Florentine garden, the chill night air brushing against his skin like whispers from the cosmos. Though the world around him slumbered, his mind was alight with a fervor that banished fatigue, a constant companion on these solitary vigils. Cradled tenderly in his arms was his most prized possession, a telescope, its polished lenses catching faint glimmers from the distant heavens. This humble instrument was, for Galileo, a passport to realms unseen and uncharted. As he peered through it, the boundless spaces overhead transformed from a simple celestial backdrop into a theater of complex movements and hidden truths. With every adjustment of the focus, celestial bodies that once seemed immutable revealed their secrets. An earthen moon scarred with craters, a luminous Venus in her phases, and Jupiter orbiting with its retinue of moons like some ancient monarch with its court. These discoveries danced at the edge of comprehension, filling him with a sense of quiet exultation. It felt as though he was a traveler finding his footing on the shores of a vast and enigmatic continent, his footprints the first to touch these austere lands. The very air around him seemed laden with the smell of damp earth and the distant charms of lavender, their fragrances mingling gently into the cool darkness. It was in moments like these, removed from the turmoil of terrestrial affairs, that his conviction solidified. Truth was a beacon, visible only to those who dared to ascend beyond the limits of accepted knowledge, those who dared to challenge convention and embrace the audacious. Yet, Galileo was no stranger to the tremors of doubt and the weight of solitude, emotions casting shadows on his nightly endeavors. His path was not paved with accolades, but strewn with the rocks of skepticism and the thorns of opposition. One flickering candle lit his workbench, its feeble light a stark contrast to the brilliance of his visions. His insights posed a direct threat to the dogmas that shaped the foundations of his contemporaries' beliefs, while others tutted and whispered their disapproval, labeling him a heretic, a renegade against the Church's grand order. Galileo knew that his discoveries were not rebellions but revelations. He saw himself as an artist, painting with the truths unearthed from infinite skies, as he meticulously documented the orbits, phases, and movements he observed. Each mark and line in his worn notebook was inscribed with the gravity of someone who felt he was capturing the very breath of creation. His heart often reflected on what the future might hold for someone dedicated to such dangerous pursuits. Could science and faith reconcile, or were they forever doomed to navigate separate orbits? These musings weighed heavily on his mind, not unlike the constellations charting their own paths above him. Still, he remained resolute, driven by the flame of knowledge and a daunting sense of purpose. When dawn's first light kissed the horizon, washing it with hues of gold and pink, Galileo knew that the celestial theater had not closed its curtains, but merely begun anew. Each sunrise was a reminder that the Earth continued its silent, majestic spin within the cosmos, a dance only a few had dared to map, and fewer still to challenge. With eyelids heavy yet spirit indefatigable, Galileo prepared to rest. For within the night to follow, the stars would once more beckon, and his journey through the heavens would continue. The air was thick with the musty scent of old parchment and ink as Galileo sat hunched over his wooden desk, its surface cluttered with celestial maps and mathematical instruments. By lamplight, his fingers traced the bold outlines of yet another sketch of the night sky. Increasingly familiar constellations sprawled across the paper like companions in his solitary vigil. From outside the window, the cool breeze of a Tuscan night carried the faint rustle of olive leaves, a soothing counterpoint to the ceaseless torrent of his thoughts. In these solitary moments, the boundaries of his modest study seemed to fade, expanding to enfold the vast, starry void he so often contemplated. Each observation through his telescope not only pulled at the limits of the known universe, but also at the rigid confines of his own existence. Beyond the glass, the heavens awaited, twinkling with unspoken secrets, daring him to decipher their truths. The muted flicker of the lantern threw shadows that danced across the room's stone walls, their shifting forms mirroring the inner conflict that stirred within Galileo's mind. It was a tension between duty and insatiable curiosity, the latter often leading him into restless midnight hours, where the sound of a quill scratching across parchment became his trusted companion. Waves of doubt sometimes crashed over him, questioning the wisdom of his pursuits. There was a simplicity to the life he'd left behind, one clear of the controversies that inevitably shadowed new ideas. Reports had reached him of whispers in the corridors of power, murmurs of dissent, and suspicion from those who feared the undermining of sacred doctrines. Yet, each night as he turned his gaze upward, Galileo was reminded of why he must continue. The stars held their secrets with a quiet majesty that stirred his soul, an unspoken challenge to unravel the tapestry of creation itself. His reflections often led him to ponder the conversations with his own conscience. Was this insatiable pursuit of knowledge an act of divine inspiration or defiance? He questioned whether he was driven by genuine enlightenment or merely by the desire to question unequivocal truths. The dance of moral and intellectual challenge invigorated him. It was a tightrope walk of conviction and defiance, offering no simple resolution, no clear path forward, only stars as the beacons in the night. As the shadows lengthened, his thoughts turned toward the horizon, where his lens had revealed the wonders of Jupiter's moons, emerging as silent witnesses to human ingenuity and profound celestial coherence. These observations bolstered his spirit, a validation that the effort was not in vain, a nod from the universe itself, acknowledging his persistent quest. Suddenly, the simplest of sounds, a bird's muted trill in the eaves, the whisper of leaves rustling, brought him back to the tangible world of earthly concerns. He rose, stretching his weary limbs, the aroma of warm ashes in the hearth mingling with the sweet fragrance of night-blooming jasmine drifting through the shuttered window. The promise of dawn's light was still hours away, but the anticipation of revealing what secrets lay in the skies gave his heart a flutter of youthful enthusiasm, as if each observation marked the beginning of a new adventure. Here, at this precipice of knowledge and wonder, Galileo stood alone, yet profoundly connected to the cosmos. His journey was not just one of discovery, but one of liberation, a soaring flight beyond the confines of mere existence into the realms of infinite possibility. His belief in the certainty of his purpose was unwavering, a poetic ode to the endless dance of inquisitive minds seeking the divine rhythm of the universe. The vast Tuscan sky stretched endlessly, a tapestry of midnight blue velvet embroidered with countless glittering stars. Beneath this celestial dome, Galileo often found himself entranced, his mind a whirlpool of hypotheses and dreams, driven by an insatiable curiosity that burned brighter than any star. The warm evening breeze would gently caress his cheeks, carrying with it the intoxicating scents of lavender and rosemary from the surrounding hillsides. Cicadas hummed their lilting symphony, each note a companion to the astronomer's solitude and contemplation. As he gazed upwards, beyond the familiar constellations, Galileo felt a profound sense of unity with the cosmos. It was as though the universe itself extended an invitation, beckoning him to unravel its mysteries. The cool grass beneath his feet anchored him to the earth, grounding him even as his thoughts soared to distant, uncharted realms. In those moments, time seemed to dissolve, a mere construct powerless against the boundless eternity above. But Galileo's path to discovery was fraught with sacrifice. His heart heavy with the burden of familial expectations, he often grappled with a profound solitude that only the stars could understand. His father had envisioned a more traditional future for him, a life meticulously charted along the safe harbors of commerce or law. Yet, Galileo's soul harbored a yearning that could not be tamed. It was as if the melodies of the spheres played solely for him, urging him to compose new equations and construct revolutionary telescopes that would blur the boundary between the seen and the unseen. How many nights had he spent perched atop his humble roof, the air filled with the crisp scent of distant rain? With his handmade telescope, an extension of his very being, pressed eagerly to his eye, Galileo would pierce the darkness. Every swirling nebula and lunar crater whispered secrets that defied earthly convention. Each discovery was a reaffirmation, a celestial nod that he was on the right path, even as the tension between his quiet resolve and the volatile world around him intensified. The struggle for acceptance and understanding among his peers often plagued his thoughts. In the shadowy corners of his mind lurked the fear of condemnation, the recollections of whispered defamations and open mockery by those who were shackled by tradition. Yet, courage welled within him, a silent but powerful torrent that refused to be silenced. Each step had been a dance with destiny, a resistance to the constraints of the known, and a passionate embrace of the mysteries that lay just out of reach. The Tuscan sky witnessed his tribulations, welcomed his triumphs, and bore silent testimony to the era of enlightenment he came to embody. The constellations that hung so faithfully overhead saw in him a kindred spirit, a mortal who dared to look not just at them, but beyond, seeking truths that might alter the very fabric of understanding itself. In the end, Galileo's journey was more than a pursuit of knowledge. It was an exploration of what it meant to be truly human, a quest for understanding threaded with wonder, resilience, and an unwavering defiance of ignorance. As we ponder his legacy, we remember that in the gentle embrace of the cosmos, we might too find our courage to venture beyond, guided by the same timeless stardust that once lit the path for Galileo beneath the Tuscan sky.